were measuring your potential with the wrong measuring stick, because you were looking at specific other people that had very different goals than you.
Yes. It's a very interesting and challenging time going through due diligence and all the different processes that happen when you obviously sell a business. It was almost one of those things where when I signed up for the arena, I was just like, why am I adding like another thing to my plate? Very successfully exited my agency. I kept a belief set and a mind frame throughout the entire thing that made the process not just not destroy me, but like really elevated me to another level. And you almost kind of feel unstoppable and kind of unbreakable, which is pretty damn cool.
Welcome to today's episode, everyone. Today, I'm joined by Hursh Dodhia-Shah. He built and grew a 7-figure agency, and now he's also exited it, and he's in the process of merging it into a bigger one. Hursh was one of my more enjoyable alumni in the program. I had a blast working with him, and he had a very interesting insight around week number 2 that was a giant trajectory setter. And I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs need to be reminded of, kind of like his revelation. And also just like seeing the success he's had and the fact that obviously I just enjoyed very much working together. I wanted to have him on the pod. So first I want to say, Hursh, thank you for coming on, man. Appreciate you being here.
Mate, absolutely stoked to be here. And yeah, let's dive into it for sure.
Cool. So before we get into the tactics and all that, can you please describe the before the arena and the after, both from let's call it the more tangible external level and from an internal level as well, if you want?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, before the arena, like I've been into personal development and self development for quite a long time. I've been running a business. I've been running a business for about sort of eight and a half years as well. Done a ton of really cool things in business, a bunch of self development, that kind of thing. And I'm always like the kind of person that just likes doing the next thing and doing the next thing to always kind of keep and sort of stay sharp. So I guess I was just looking for whatever edge I could basically gain by going through the arena, and the arena and yourself came very highly recommended from some previous alumni as well. So I was like, I really wanted to kind of jump in and sort of give it a go. At the time, I was running like a 7-figure agency, and no agency journey is without its, or no business journey is without its ups and downs and challenges and this and that. So and around the beginning of the program was when I was really starting to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the due diligence process for the acquisition of our agency by, I guess, our state. So I'm in Perth, Western Australia. Like WA is like the largest and most successful digital marketing agency was looking at acquiring us. So it was a very interesting and challenging time in the business to basically go through the arena, because it was kind of like, everyone that's basically sold a business before knows that when you're running the business, keeping things like obviously growing on a great trajectory while going through due diligence and all the different processes that happen when you obviously sell a business, it's kind of like everything is sort of like all in one. And it was almost one of those things where when I signed up for the arena, I was just like, why am I adding like another thing to my plate? But as you said, I had that insight in week 2 that kind of really put the whole thing into perspective and just like flipped the whole journey of that, like especially that last sort of like 3 months that was just the craziest business period of my entire life into, it was almost like an identity shift that transitioned it from like the biggest challenge to like the biggest, most amazing, glorious moment. And in a weird way, I was working like a savage and navigating all the different challenges, and I was like relishing in every single moment of it because of that one kind of simple belief shift. So it was super powerful. So I guess, in terms of tangible results, after the arena, very successfully exited my agency, which was amazing. So both great for my life and for the business as well. So that was a fantastic result. But I think the most important part was I kept a mind frame and I kept a belief set and a mind frame throughout the entire thing that made the process like not destroy me kind of thing. And not just not destroy me, but like really elevated me to another level and kind of instilled like a belief set in here that taking into anything else, you almost, without sounding too cocky or anything like that, you almost kind of feel unstoppable and kind of unbreakable, which is pretty damn cool.
That is, man. Congrats, both in the external and the internal stuff, man.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's kind of dive into it. What was that shift for you? Can you share from your words?
Yeah, so basically it was, as I said, it was going through the hardest period of business in my entire life. Like, like good hard, not like we were in debt and about to go bankrupt. It was just like everything was kind of like
a lot.
It was a lot. And, jumping into the arena was like another thing that I was pumped to do, but it was just like another thing to kind of add to the plate. And I think when you're going through due diligence of like selling a business, there's a lot of it that kind of feels quite even if you know you've run an exceptional operation that's a very it's a sellable business, you feel like all these people that are a lot more experienced than you are and a lot further ahead in the journey are essentially kind of digging into all the dirty laundry and like pulling up like this number and this metric and this and that, and you basically kind of feel like very naked in the business sort of sense. And it's a very, very, very psychological, psychologically challenging time, because you're essentially exposing absolutely everything. You're having someone objectively critique every single part of it and giving you like a numerical and basically like a numerical value, essentially defining a value based on your business. And it's a completely separate activity to still running and growing the business, because when you're involved in growing the business at that time, you don't want the business to kind of go backwards when you're going through that sort of side of things. There's all these different things allow you to have a really successful kind of transition to the next phase and a really successful sale. So it was basically just a ton on my plate. I like being very involved in my business. I really enjoy it because I enjoy just really kind of optimizing the performance. I really didn't want to kind of give that up. And we were also growing as well, because we brought on board a new operations manager a couple of months before this kind of all happened as well. So everything was moving forward, stacking this kind of on top. And there's different times when you just take on that much of a workload that your confidence can get knocked around a bunch. And not just your confidence, but you can start resenting the process. You can start thinking that it's all really difficult. You can start like getting overwhelmed by just how challenging, just how brand new, and just how difficult it kind of like all is basically. And you can start to really kind of weaken mentally and want to kind of like either not so much give in and tap out, but it's hard to describe. It just becomes, it can sort of crush you. It really can. If you're not armed with the right sort of beliefs and mindsets. And basically it was that moment in week 2 when you were going around asking everyone how the week's been. We're going through the different activities to set your standard for like the 6-week process. And the language I was using was very defeatist, I would say, because I was probably at the stage where it was all so much and I was getting through it, but it was definitely crushing me. So I was using very kind of defeatist sort of language.
Can I chime in here, Hursh?
Yes.
I do want to give context for people that are listening. It wasn't defeatist language. It wasn't your kind of language. So by that point, we'd already had a one-on-one call and already the start of the program. And I remember the person who I met on the one-on-one calls. And you like challenges. Like I remember you said like, oh, I went to this Himalaya trek. We did this, we did that. We talked to NIMS. I did all these kind of things. And I was like, okay, this is obviously clearly an individual who enjoys challenges. And the biggest thing is, it wasn't that you were necessarily defeated. It was just that you were speaking about these experiences from a perspective that is not the one you usually hold.
Yes, correct.
Most people hold this perspective like, it shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be challenging. Life should just be rainbows and easy. And I was like, okay, this is the issue here, because you're not usually that guy. And that was for me the alarm bells. It wasn't that you were defeated. Like that was clear. I want to say like also like to be very, very clear. It's like there's still a lot of room between where you were to sounding defeated, to being sounding like a victim. You weren't that at all. It was just that you weren't at the same notch that you usually are. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, no, 100%. No, you hit the nail on the head just then. It was very much like a reminder. I think you said, you basically stopped me in my tracks when I was essentially speaking from someone who didn't reflect my true self, of that person that basically didn't relish challenges, and essentially put myself in really difficult and challenging situations because I love overcoming them. Like we did the major Himalayan expedition. I've done lots of endurance events. I've done all these other different kinds of things. Like I was often talking about how much I enjoyed the challenges and the grind of business and that kind of thing. And when it all sort of seemed to become a little bit too much, the way that I was speaking wasn't with who I know that I basically am. And you very much just stopped me in my tracks. Essentially you didn't you didn't sort of call me out, but you basically very quickly kind of snapped me back into the reality as to which is basically true, where you essentially reminded me of that innate nature that I kind of have within myself. And that's when the whole statement of basically one identity can shatter 1,000 beliefs is you essentially reminded me that I basically hold an identity that I actually absolutely love challenges. I love new challenges. I love unexpected challenges. and I thrive even more, and I become like the best version of myself, and I genuinely enjoy overcoming those challenges. So you were just like basically reminded me that like by having that identity, which is my true self, of just like I identify as a person that relishes challenges and loves overcoming them. It's all of these different things that I was sort of going through. Was like, well, did you think that it was going to be easy? And these are the challenges that you love, the challenge that you kind of like are asking for. And it landed. It was so perfect because it landed so well that it was almost like that was the moment in me during the arena. It was like a before that moment and an after that moment. And everything from there was like when it all kind of became a lot, I was just like, it's a new challenge. And I love challenges because that's who I am. It wasn't even like a belief that I had to like adopt. It was just
Yep.
when you embody that's exactly who you are, you don't need to believe in like, I believe that I love challenges. Like, I believe I can overcome challenges. If that's who you are, the beliefs don't even matter.
A lot of great points here. So I kind of want to rephrase it just to make sure that the audience understands it, also that you confirm this is what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So challenging someone's core beliefs, there's a lot of value in it, because if you challenge one belief and it affects the way you think about a lot of things, it's really great. It has a lot of impact. However, sometimes beliefs can be made completely irrelevant if an identity is behind them. And here's what I mean by that. What you were saying, for example, selling a business and going through that transition while also growing the business so the sales, it's like stays high, that's a challenging thing. We can agree on that, whether it's a belief, a truth, whatever it may be. If someone holds an identity that I can only handle a certain amount of challenge before I burn out, or whatever it may be, then that kind of thing of having to sell a business because they believe it's challenging, it'll sound terrifying for them. Like, this is a lot. I'm not sure I can handle it. However, if somebody holds the identity of like what, and this is a quote from you, from what you wrote in your workbook, I am a savage, this is who I am, I eat challenges for breakfast, I get it done. Then when they come across this kind of situation where they hold a belief that this is indeed challenging, they'll just be like, so what? It's what I do. And instead of that belief ending up intimidating them, it actually excites them, because they also recognize, you know what, this is where I shine and most people don't. So if I embrace the situation, I can actually create separation. And this is where I have opportunities. First off, does that bring it home what you said?
Yeah, nailed it 100%.
Great. So
Yeah,
question for you, because this is a big one.
That's exactly what I was trying to get across. Yeah, not so much like the challenging of the beliefs and that kind of thing doesn't have any value. It's more just in that moment for me, it was almost reminding myself of my natural identity, rendered the need to try and reiterate the beliefs almost like redundant, because the reminding myself of that identity was just like kind of shattered all of that, and we're just like,
And I think
right,
also,
this is where I feel at home.
yeah, and I think also a lot of it, so this is where a lot of the woo-woo stuff comes in. People are saying this is a negative belief, this is a limiting belief, a positive, whatever it may be. But some things are just truth. Like, it's just challenging. Like I said, like selling a business while you're running it, there's a lot to deal with. It is just challenging. And there's no need to try to fluff it up and say, it's not challenging, it's positive, it's amazing, yay me. But if you're going to say it is challenging, however, I'm also fully capable of handling that, and that's my identity, that's who I decide to identify as, it makes it irrelevant. And all of a sudden, it doesn't feel like fluffy or boo-boo.
Yeah, I think, and then basically what happened was, uh, after that moment, it was kind of like when that really kind of sank in and sort of internalized. I looked at everything after that moment as, well, this is just a part of the process that you or I or anyone has to go through to achieve this goal. Not like this is a unique and insurmountable challenge that I must like try the hardest that I possibly can to kind of get over, because it was just like, it very much like it didn't so much downplay the challenge, but it was just like, well, it's, if I identify as this person and this is the challenge, this is the road that I have to walk. And then it actually just became a process. And then all of a sudden it's like the shift of that, like, or the reminder of that, like, identity kind of just turned the 16-hour days and the this and feeling exposed and all the internal stuff that's going on, and the death of the identity of my old business being acquired by a new one and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of became like, it was all still, it was difficult and it was hard to go through internally. And it was emotionally challenging and physically challenging and all these different kinds of things. But it was at the deepest levels, it was just accepted as a part of the process, and in a weird way, actually became enjoyable because it was met with that identity of, I love challenges, I eat challenges for breakfast. Therefore, the harder the challenge, the deeper the fulfillment. So it just turned it into a process, really.
Can I offer a bit of a different thought?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's hard for us to bullshit ourselves. And here's where I'm going with that. Like you said, you didn't try to discredit how challenging the thing was to do. That wasn't the point of saying this actually isn't challenging, it's easy. But instead of just trying to like minimize that belief and make it so it's not as hard, you just said, I'm actually more capable. You remind yourself of that. So even though it was you're doing a hard thing, you just remind yourself how capable you are. So it's not about a lot of times just trying to bullshit ourselves and say, oh, this is not hard, this is amazing. If there's a strong why behind it, yay me. But it's actually just recognizing, this is challenging. However, I am more capable than this challenge, so to speak. So therefore, I shouldn't fear it. I think a lot of times, especially when, like you said, there's so many things going on from so many different angles, we almost lose sense of ourselves at times. Like we get a little bit of bad feedback somewhere, and then we get a little bit of bad feedback there, and all of a sudden our sense of confidence or sense of self gets degraded a little bit. And then it starts to almost snowball downhill. And I think that's a lot of times the power of that. It's not about trying to say, okay, this actually isn't that challenging, because it is. And if you try to say that, your brain won't believe you. It's not going to be like, let's change this positive belief and this negative belief into a positive belief. It doesn't buy that. But if you can say, and this is where I talk to you about it, like, listen, dude, the past has shown that you really like challenges. Like, there's evidence here. Like how you said, the Himalaya trek, the endurance events, all that kind of jazz. So remember who you are. Now, with that, I want to ask you a question here, because in that state, when we're not fully confident, it's sometimes hard for us to hear other people or like get back on the horse, so to speak. So what do you think it was both about perhaps where you were, that you were capable of receiving that, and how I delivered it that actually enabled you to receive that? Like for someone listening back home, what do you think is the formula there, so to speak?
Yeah. So the first one I think was you were extremely confident and extremely like, it's as if you just like you immediately recognize the problem and you immediately recognize the shift that needed to be made within like an instant, because you've done this for such a long period of time as like an elite performance coach. It was a conviction in which you delivered it that quickly. And because for me, like, I think the reason that it sank in instantly is because I knew it was true, but I couldn't see it for myself, or I didn't have the level of perspective or the external perspective, which I think is so important when it comes to coaching, that allowed me to kind of recognize that sort of within myself. But you saw it straight away and delivered it. Basically, when I sort of needed it most in that time. And the reason that it landed and internalized super quickly was because I think it hit like one of my deepest kind of like truths of my identity. So it was almost like an instantaneous, like as I said, the whole investment was worth it in week 2 because of that one moment kind of thing, because it sort of shifted everything.
Can I add one big thing here?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure else you're aware of this. The reason that would not have landed for some people. The reality, though, was even though you came to that call like a bit overwhelmed, you came to the call with a desire to win, not to receive sympathy. And that's the big difference. A lot of times people, they fall into this, I'm going to call it like a micro victimhood, where we have a lot going on and we just want some sympathy. And you didn't want that. You were just like, I want to win. You had this real innate hunger to win. So when all of a sudden there was a light was shining on that, you were like, oh, okay, this is exactly what it is. This is what I needed. Let's go. And I think it's a big thing for people back home. Like a lot of times when we fall into these situations, a natural default is like we want a little bit of sympathy or empathy, and it's understandable. But they can't fall into like micro victimhood. And you just have this innate desire to win in you with that. And that's why when you receive this opportunity, say, how can I view it in a different way that would allow me to win? You jumped on. And that's a crucial thing. Does that resonate?
Yeah, 100%. Like I was ready to. It's almost I was just super solution focused, and it was another reason why I was in the arena. It was just like I just want the good stuff to get me to the next level. Like I don't give a fuck how that comes to me, basically. Like you just got to say what you got to say, and it'll land, and I'll just like I'll take it, and obviously try and make the best out of it as quickly as I possibly can.
Cool. So
it was like I wasn't there for any other reason aside from just like I want to take everything from this and just like implement it in my life as quickly as possible to get the results as fast as possible, basically.
Yeah. So this is something else I wanted to bring up because you mentioned this and it was interesting to me that you had never done group coaching before,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, the group coaching said it helped it feel less intense. Like it's not something special, a special obstacle that you're going through. Can you speak to that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I've done like a lot of like one-to-one coaching before and that kind of thing. But the group coaching environment that was in a very like a focused kind of a structured format. With other people, I think you selected the people, or the arena selects people that are of a decent, like a pretty decent caliber. I mean, there's obviously people doing different revenue levels, different levels of like external success and that kind of thing. But it very much selects people that have that um,
Yep.
growth mindset. That if you've got that growth mindset and you're super driven to achieve outcomes in whatever aspect of your life, you are going to come across universal problems that everyone else kind of faces at some stage. So, like a lot of the time, when you were coaching other people, or when other people were kind of sharing their stories, it felt like you could relate to every single person there, because you are either going through it, whether it was subconsciously or consciously at the time, or you'd recently gone through something similar, or you'd gone through something similar in the past, or it was kind of like, oh wow, I didn't even consider that for the future kind of thing. So it was very much because of the like-mindedness of all the individuals in the group, and because of the willingness of everyone to kind of like come out and share. And the more open one person is, the more open every single person is, and then the more open everyone else becomes, more and more and more and more and more. So it really became like a very positive environment for vulnerability, but like in a productive way, because everyone was of that caliber, that they're all chasing better things in life. So they're all coming up against very universal kind of blocks as well. So it was almost like, oh wow, it's not only me. And I think that everyone was kind of feeling like, oh wow, it's not only me, because a lot of the time you'd finish a one-to-one with someone on the call, and it's almost like the question that you're about to ask had sort of been answered, or it would almost change the question that you were about to ask, or would change something that you were kind of struggling with, because it landed for you in a way that kind of helped you when you're coaching someone else as well.
So to kind of repeat that, you're saying that, from what I'm gathering, that a lot of times, let's call it the challenges we face, they feel much more challenging than they actually are, because we think, oh, this is something unique that perhaps I'm not doing well. So therefore, I should feel a little bit bad about myself.
Yeah.
However, when we see that in so many other people and recognize it's not my problem, it's just the problem, then it becomes, like you said earlier, oh, this is just a part of the process. This is not something I need to have more stress or anxiety about, or whatever it may be. And when you're when you're around like-minded people, you just see that all the time.
It depersonalized it as well. So yeah, like you hit the nail on the head. It basically it's not my problem. It is the problem, or it is a universal problem. And in a way, yeah, it makes you get out of your own head about it. It makes you feel less, like almost like personally kind of like not less personally responsible, but like it's not just unique to you, and it's not that you're this like flawed individual.
It's not that you've done
like,
something wrong. I think that's the big thing. It's not that you've done something wrong. It's just it's part of the process.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Before I segue to a different thing, is there anything else you want to say about the identity piece? I think that was so powerful. Any lessons that you want to share for someone who's kind of like forgetting themselves a little bit in hard times, or whatever it may be?
Yeah. So what you brought up before about like, especially when you've got like empirical evidence of who you are in the past, I think that every single person, when they get to a certain challenge or a roadblock that they have to overcome, that seems extremely stressful or extremely challenging, it also reminded me that previously the qualities that I had to have, and the qualities and the values that I embodied to get over previous massive challenges, all seemed just as massive as the one ahead of me back in the day when I kind of went over them. If I was to go over the exact same road bump or the exact same challenge a second time, obviously it'd be easier because I've trained myself kind of through it. But every brand new challenge and brand new mountain that I kind of had to climb seemed the exact same way at the start. And it was a very, very, very kind of like a typical process, being like, oh my God, this is going to be like crazy, head down, just kind of get through it anyway, feel the like almost love the process more than you enjoy like solving the challenge, having that glory at the end of solving this like massive insurmountable challenge that you just thought was, how the fuck am I going to get through this? And then, then you return to like a status quo and evolved version of yourself like afterwards. But it's that the initial part that's what's massively changed for me almost permanently. That initial part, that's like when you get to this mountain that's like seems insurmountable. It's the initial part where you're like, oh my god, how the fuck am I going to do this? Has changed into like,
let's go.
let's go. I was like, this is going to be crazy and it's going to be brutal, but like, let's go, because there's a deeper belief that you can get through it, and you will get through it because you're the person that gets through it and you enjoy getting through it. So it's just it changes that thing at the start, but that thing at the start can be the thing that either makes you procrastinate for hours, days, weeks, months, never gets you started, or is always kind of in the back of your mind when you're kind of going through the process. So it makes it a lot more painful and doesn't allow you to like go all into it and just kind of like get to the other side, like, sooner rather than later. So it's that initial piece is super powerful. That's the biggest shift, I think.
Yeah. Can I add a ripple for you with that?
Yeah.
So this is especially for you as you're a very competitive individual, and for anybody else out there as well. It's like the likes competition. The best way I've heard this said is there's a YouTube video called The Last Lecture. It's a famous lecture given by Professor Carnegie Mellon that he basically was diagnosed with cancer. He had a certain amount of time left to live, and he gave this big last lecture about his life lessons. And he said, the walls in life are there for us. They're there to keep those other people out. They're there to help us show how much we actually want. And I remember hearing that, it stuck with me, because the reality is, if it's not challenging, you don't have the opportunity on the other side, because everybody would just already take it. If there isn't that mountain to climb, so to speak, you don't get to have that peak for yourself. It just doesn't exist. So beyond it being the thrill of the challenge and pursuing it and solving it, it's also just recognizing it, like, I don't get to have the gift without this. Both the external gift, but also the internal gift, like you said, about growth. And for me, that's always been an interesting perspective when I face a challenge, is just saying, you know what, thank God this challenge is here. Because if it wasn't here, there wouldn't be the reward, because everybody would have already done it. And just recognizing that as well.
Big time. It's almost, it's just, it's as cheesy as it sort of sounds, the reward really is kind of who you become on the other side of it. And without the challenge, there is literally like no evolution. Like, it's cliche, but it's just super, 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 super true. But going back to that identity piece, it's actually like, it was just recognizing that like you enjoy the process of that evolution, because a lot of people don't. I feel like a lot of people don't enjoy the process of that evolution. They're like smash through challenges because they have to get somewhere, and like, it's like, they're like, oh, like I have to do this and this and this and this and this, like, oh, like I just want to be on the other side kind of thing, which just makes the whole challenge so much more. You have to go through it. It just makes it so much more painful. But by relishing it, enjoying it, or having that identity, like, it's going to be hard, brutal, ridiculous, but I enjoy it, and this is like the pathway to the next level, and the gift is the evolution. It's like, you can't really fail with that mentality, or if you fail, it's just another challenge.
So I want to add one more thing to that from a different angle, because there was one other thing in the beginning of the program that I saw was kind of working against, that was challenging that identity of yours. So it was causing you to forget that a little bit. And it was one of the fears that you had, that I'm currently not living up to my potential. And I felt that was frustrating your sense of identity, because you felt like if I'm not living up to my potential, that means I'm being a bit of a wuss somewhere, or I'm not really going for it, or whatever it may be. And that created this confusion where it caused you to doubt yourself. Like, am I really that guy who loves challenges? Because if I am, I should be living up to my potential. But what was interesting is that a lot of that self-doubt faded once you actually get context from it. And when you realize this was just the wrong measuring stick, that like some people have different measuring sticks than me, so I'm basing my potential off their measuring stick, not how I want it, where I want to have a broader life than some people who just want to focus on a specific angle. It freed a lot of that for you. Am I right to have read it like that? Or what was it from your angle?
Yeah, so actually, sorry, just say that again.
So one of the things I noticed that detracted from your ability to remember who you are, and that you do love challenges and that you love going for them, was that you had this belief that I'm currently not living up to my potential. And obviously that would cause someone to feel like, okay, if I'm not living up to my potential, maybe I'm not really a savage. Maybe I'm not really that guy. And the moment we recognize, you know what, it's not that you're not living up to your potential. It says that you are measuring your potential with the wrong measuring stick, because you're looking at specific other people that had very different goals than you. And then you say, well, I'm not doing what they're doing. And the moment you kind of recognize that, a lot of that faded as well. And I'm curious if that was something that was relevant for you as well, or just something that I saw from the side that didn't have as big of an impact.
No, it was definitely it was definitely relevant to a certain extent. Like I think you the whole the measuring stick thing is one of the hardest things to make internal rather than external, because your whole life you're doing it sort of like externally. But then when you realize, obviously, every single individual person's context is their own, all their value systems is their own, the way they've grown up, what their preferences are, how they want to live, what results they want to achieve, whether they just want to dedicate all their time to business or they want to have all these other pursuits like outside of that, and what that success kind of means to them. But you very much look externally to gain knowledge or inspiration or wisdom or whatever, but that can very quickly turn into like, almost like a bit of comparison envy, or just like taking on other people's measuring sticks in terms of like being like, well, the best mountaineers do these mountains in this kind of order, or like, I've seen agency like owners scale 10 times bigger than what I have, but then what does that mean for their past, their present, their future, what their other goals in life are, that kind of thing as well. So I think it basically just takes the pressure off and actually just allows you to relish in the process and relish in the challenge. And it just gives you, it gives you peace, and also it gives you that fulfillment, because it is 100% your pathway and your pursuit. And, in the theme of like returning back to yourself, it all comes down to the intuition that you basically feel in terms of like, this is right for me or this is not right for me. Which also is like, the identity of just like coming back to myself, of like, being that person that like loves taking on kind of challenges, but the challenges have to be our own. They can't be anyone else's. So that's, to be honest, that's actually been like a struggle, like my whole life. And I'm getting better and better and better and better and better at it. But I think once again, that was another big thing, is in like being in a group of like all these other people. They were all struggling from that, like, comparison envy, or like, using different measuring sticks, or using measuring sticks without any self-context whatsoever. It's like, hey, it's not just like a problem, like for me, it's like a problem for like a lot of high performers that like happen to be in this program as well.
I'll touch a couple points that you made that I think is very valuable, both for yourself, listeners as well. What you said there about pressure, it reduces the pressure. So here's the deal. People who are, let's call it, naturally high performers, they hold themselves to high levels of accountability. Naturally, because even their own thing, not, the mimetic desires, other people, whatever, just their own things they really want to achieve. So in order to do that, they have to hold themselves accountable to certain things. Now, those high levels of accountability can sometimes create pressure. And some pressure, again, is great. It gets you going. But there's also comes a certain tipping point where there's too much pressure that causes your performance to tank. Now, the assumption is that you, as a driven individual, Hursh, like, you're always going to hold yourself accountable. So let's not add things that you shouldn't be holding yourself accountable to, because that's going to create undue pressure and actually hurt your performance. And that's, I think, the big thing. Some people are often afraid of, I'm going to let go of this fear, or like that I'm not going to do this or not going to do that. And it's going to remove, like, I'm not going to be accountable to like doing big things anymore. It's just not what I've seen with people who are naturally driven. And how you're saying is like, I'm assuming, Hursh, like when you were a kid, you were always the one that was staying late at sports, or like whatever was your hobby, you were the one that always was putting in the extra work. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a big thing. And just recognizing that the external pressures we put on ourselves from other people's measuring sticks, they hurt our performance a lot. And it's something, if we're not cognizant of, it can just take us down.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time.
Cool.
And I think the other part to that as well is just that the self accountability, like whatever you think is like a really meaningful goal for you, obviously kind of comes from within, and that's like, that is the, and you'll know when you're playing it small, and you'll know when you're actually like, like playing it safe or kind of playing to win. But like your version of playing to win might be like amazing for you, but the second you take it external to yourself and you're just like, well, this outcome is like completely different to like, me, for example, trying to climb, Island Peak or Amadablam, as opposed to going for like Kanchenjunga or Everest for, I'm just using the mountaineering stuff because
Yeah.
that's, that the expedition that I just sort of went on. It's like, well, you actually have to have a crazy resume of so many different like insane climbs, plus natural abilities definitely kind of come into it, plus this, plus this, plus this to hit kind of like these mountains over here. So if I was like being like, oh, attempting to like summit Amadablam kind of thing compared to like one of these other mountains without all of these different external kind of like things that are just like, other people have like gone their entire lives of building those sorts of things to reach those climbs, whereas I kind of haven't, just given like all the other things that I'm like really passionate about and kind of chasing. It's like it'd be so stupid to feel really shitty about like your achievement compared to that because there's just no context.
And that's the thing, though. It will make people feel shitty. It'll make people then feel like they should doubt their actual path and then doubt their actual abilities. And that's when it erodes your identity. And that's why having these unclear focuses of what you actually want to achieve because you're looking at other people, it can really actually hurt your performance in the thing that you should be focused on because it causes you to doubt yourself. It's like, why am I not doing this and this and this? Even though you know that you chose not to do this, this, and this. And that's why you don't have those results. But if we don't remember that, it's very erosive. So, Hursh, I wanted to kind of wrap this up. I want to ask, is there any last takeaways, something you could share for the audience, someone who's in a similar position, who's going through a lot? Naturally, they're a driven individual. They like challenges. They like to win. And they're just going through a lot, whether it's a lot of long working hours or whatever it may be. And you're saying, I think they should hear this and it could really help them.
Yeah. So the first thing, and I'm kind of like living it right, like I'm living it sort of right now. There is a season for everything, and when you're going through that whole, the whole famous saying of like when you're going through hell, just kind of keep going. Like there is, once again, as cliche as it sounds, there is so many lighter days on the back end of it. And the other big thing is it's so easy to forget how difficult and how challenging a certain pathway was when you're on the other side of it and you're in a bit of a period of kind of stability, because like life can turn so fun, so easy, and so good just as fast as it can turn like really kind of challenging. And you almost have to remind yourself consistently that you are capable of those challenges. So when life is easy or good or stable or whatever, like strategically adding in your own challenges to kind of keep yourself sharp for when that inevitable big challenge kind of comes, I think is like super, super, super important. It's something that I've been doing like my entire life. But it definitely is this too shall pass, but don't wait to enjoy it or, or feel the power of it in your life only when it's past. Like when you're in the middle of it, just take a bit of an objective step back to realize how fucking awesome what you're currently going through is, or even if it's not awesome, just like what the evolution that's currently happening within you basically is during that sort of stuff, like that sort of side of things. Like I do just keep a journal, and I just write in that sort of once a morning. And if I'm going through a particularly like really, really, really demanding kind of period, I'm just like, I'm super grateful for all the challenges that I'm currently experiencing because it's like evolving who I am in real time. And then reminding myself of that is just like, you can really enjoy that process.
That's great, man. I'll leave it with this. There's a saying I love from wrestling, real wrestling, not a WWF, called embrace the grind. It doesn't mean just endure the grind, deal with it, but embrace it, love it. Because if you really want to excel, like you got to cherish it. It's a gift. Without that grind, you don't get to be the best version of yourself. And that's kind of think where I want to leave the audience with today, that kind of question that what if instead of letting the fact that something is hard or challenging demotivate you, you allowed it to actually do the exact opposite? Because the reality is, if you're a listener of this podcast, you like doing hard things, you like challenges, and you've probably already taken on some pretty big challenges in your life. And if you can embrace the fact that it's a separation tool, that where most people would avoid something, you're actually uniquely suited to go for it because you don't avoid challenges, you actually enjoy them. Like, you can all of a sudden see all the challenges as a gift, as an opportunity. They're like what we said earlier, those are the walls that keep the other people out who don't deserve it enough. And I think if you hold that kind of mentality around a lot of things, and you hold that kind of identity that I can be that guy who embraces the grind, I can be that person because that's who I am, you can win really big. And a lot of the beliefs that you hold of how things are challenging don't even matter anymore. Because so what if they're challenging? You love that stuff. You eat it. And
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, you're right. Like I almost like I like it to like whenever I'm going through something like that, I'm just like I always just remind myself like I put myself here, and this is a lifestyle choice. Like this is my ideal lifestyle almost, because it really is like a lifestyle choice because you put yourself in that position, or if you find yourself in that position, it's like it's something that like was in your pathway to kind of go through. So yeah, I think embracing it really that is a real thing. It's a real thing, and to be completely honest, it's I've probably been in a bit of a stability period for about like 3 or 4 weeks now, and I'm starting to get a little bit antsy to like just to dive into the next like massive kind of a project like already. So it's like you wish for the days to be over, only so that you can be chilling for a little bit of time. You like live the good life for a few weeks, only to like you'll eventually realize that like you love throwing yourself into big stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great takeaway. All right, so Hursh, if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Best way to connect is definitely Instagram. So at Hursh Dodhia-Shah, Dodhiashah. Instagram is 100% the place, the best place to connect with me for sure.
Cool, and we'll have that link in the show notes below. Aside from that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I want to say, Hursh, thank you again for coming on and sharing. And if you want my personal help to actually make that kind of your natural default, where you don't see challenges as obstacles, but as opportunities, and learn how to really embrace them with a fun manner and get all the success that comes with it, you're welcome to apply to the arena as well. So, Hursh, I want to say thank you again. I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Really, yeah, mate. Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, thanks for all the coaching and the help so far. And just to add to what you just said, then we've read, like turn obstacles into opportunities, and like relish the challenges, and like enjoy the process. Like every single person has read that and listened to that like a billion times. It's seen on a billion different screensavers, listened to a billion different podcasts, but like going through the process of the coaching to actually fully realize that within yourself and internalizing it makes it hit so much more different. It doesn't. You can read it 100 times, but until you like internalize it and like identify with it, big difference.
Appreciate it, man. All right. Thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.